So this panel is going to be on building and maintaining a corporate culture, an effective corporate culture, and we've got a great panel. I'll let them introduce themselves, and before that I'll introduce moderator tonight, who's Angela Lee, who runs 37 Angels. Angela will tell you more about it, but she's 37 Angels is an angel network of women angels that is really focused on educating and informing angels here in New York, and does great work. So, Angela, I commend you for that, and we're super happy to have you here. So thank you very much.
So, hello everybody. So, as David mentioned, I run 37 Angels, and we are women investors focused on closing the gender gap in that space. We are gender neutral on the entrepreneur side, though, so invest in men and women. And I'm really excited to talk today about startup culture, which is actually something that we don't talk about enough, I think. But I want to start by letting the group introduce themselves. So maybe we'll start here.
Hi, my name is Mona. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Joor. We are an online marketplace that allows brands and retailers to transact. We work with over 750 brands that range from Stella McCartney, Rag & Bone, DVF, so women's, men's, contemporary, and luxury brands, and over 60,000 retailers.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Chevensky. I am CEO and lady boss at Glimpse. Our primary mission is digital rights, but our explicit secondary mission is women in tech. We have a strong company culture around both those things. So it should be interesting to talk to you guys tonight.
Hi everyone, my name is Kellee Khalil. I'm the founder and CEO of Loverly, Lover.ly. My personal mission is wedding world domination, but Loverly's plan is to make wedding planning easier and more fun. We work with 44 of the largest independent publishers in bridal, over 3,000 brands, and allow brides to shop 400,000 products on our platform. And coming soon, we're rolling out our local vendor marketplace to allow them to browse and hire 43,000 local vendors and just make weddings awesome again.
Hi, I'm Nina Sodhi. I'm the CEO and founder of Nikina, which is a consulting company that I've been running for 5 months. Prior to that, I was the CEO of Fawn US, which is a Wi-Fi company. Prior to that, I was the CEO and founder of Blue Trumpet, which got acquired by Breaktime Studios. Prior to that, the COO of BumpTop, which was acquired by Google. My background before all that includes investment banking and a stint at Microsoft. I have an engineering degree from the University of Waterloo in Canada and an MBA from Harvard.
Clearly a slacker panel. Okay. So why don't we actually start with Nina? So one of the questions I have is, as entrepreneurs, you guys are doing a million things a day. So how do you make time for something as nebulous as having a culture?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. Because there are easily 10 times as many things as you have time to do in a day. And so the trick is prioritization, and it's hard, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, even week by week, month by month. And I encourage people to think about company culture on a week by week or month by month basis, because there's just so many fire drills in between that if it had to compete with a minute by minute or hour by hour structure, it might not win. And it should win at some level. So given we've all got a million things to do, all the CEOs, founders, and all the other startup folks in the room, even general managers at larger companies, if you don't pay attention to culture, your job becomes a lot harder. And so that's why one should pay attention to culture. It's not to feel good, it's not so your employees feel good. It's not to, check the box. It's because it makes things easier. And it will make things easier. A little bit of time investment up front will pay off over time, inevitably. And it could pay off in things like product decisions that will have to get made without you. Client decisions that will have to get made without you. All of these things, they stem from building capacity in your team and building a culture around being able to make decisions and know when and where to ask for help. And so I guess that justifies why to find the time, where to find the time. One of the things that is tough is like I was saying, a minute by minute construct. And so if you think about it month to month or week to week, you can start to plan events, or you can start to plan one-on-ones. And if you miss too many one-on-ones, which is inevitably going to happen, you can think about it on a monthly basis. Gosh, I didn't do a one-on-one with my number 2 or my number 3 over the last 2 weeks. We really need to sit down and make it happen. And so if you think about it from that perspective, hopefully it'll be able to get slotted in. Another way to really try to fit it in your I guess day-to-day life is to empower the people around you. And if you think in terms of hierarchy, or even if you think in terms of just general team around you, the layer right below you, or immediately circling you, inspire them to think about culture as well. Inspire them to do the one-on-ones and keep the one-on-ones, and inspire them to set up team events and attend them and really plan for them and really get into it. And that way it's not all just on you. It really will be you as the CEO, and everything filters down. There's no getting around that. But you can get help and motivation and sort of folks to pick up the slack around you if you're traveling, or if you're doing spending a lot of time on, say, fundraising or something like that in the moment. I'm reading a great book right now by Ben Horowitz. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And he speaks a lot about culture, more than I thought he would, actually. And his view is if you don't have the right culture, and I agree with it, which is why I bring it up here. If you don't have the right culture, or if you haven't invested in the right culture, when things go wrong, you can blame the culture. And then you gotta blame yourself. But it does help to sort of set up what it is that you want, how you want people to behave, how you want them to be accountable, how you want them to interact with each other, how you want them to make decisions, how you want them to deal with failure, how you want them to deal with success. These are all elements of creating a really strong culture. And when things go wrong, you can often look to those areas and say, gosh, I didn't build up the culture strong enough, the fabric of the company strong enough to withstand some of the stresses put upon it.
Right. So I have a very different approach, and you definitely got your MBA, and you've definitely worked at a lot of companies, because I learned this the hard way. Well, first I want to actually just kind of suss out the crowd here. Who here is currently an entrepreneur or working on their own thing? Anyone here? Hi, raise it high, because this is something, yeah. Okay, now who's thinking about starting a company? Okay, anyone here work at a startup? So we got a nice little mix here, right? So first of all, look around you, the people that were raising your hand, that's gonna be your network, that's gonna be your key, that's what's gonna help you build your company, is building relationships with people who are in the same spot as you. I agree with everything you said, but I will say, for me personally, it's not about fitting it in. It's in our fiber and it's in our DNA of what our company stands for. So for me, we're pretty, we're Loverly, it's all about making things easy and more fun. But our culture is who we are, and that starts with me as a CEO and what I believe in. And I believe in creating value for users, creating an awesome experience, creating value for our partners. And to me, our brand, everything we stand for, our essence, is focused on that. So people who work at our company have to be passionate about creating value, whether that's creating valuable design, valuable code, valuable relationships with clients. It's all about value. It means how you talk to your clients. It means how you talk to your employees. If I hear some bickering in the office, maybe people are, because they're passionate, they're excited about what they're doing, I'll come in there and I'll mediate and be like, this is not who we are. You guys are fighting because you love the problem you're solving, but this is not how we talk. This is not how we roll as Loverly. We're about love, we're about value, we're about creating amazing experiences, and that is the fiber in which I run my company. So everyone I look for in the business, whether you are an engineer, whether you're a data guy, whether you're a designer or a salesperson, do you carry that same passion, that love for what you do? If not, go work at a big company. It'll be awesome there. You'll get paid a lot of money. But you know what happens sometimes at startups? You don't get paid. You know what happens at startups? You work late nights. And if all you care about is playing ping pong and the idea of getting a free lunch or, great coffee, which we have great coffee at our office, it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. So what we offer you at working at a startup is a chance to build, a chance to solve problems, a chance to do things you can never do in corporate America. And that to me is what culture is. And it comes from, me as the CEO, my executive team, every single person who walks in the door are interns. We empower them to solve problems. We empower them to really think about, the challenges they're facing as an intern. You're tagging content on our platform. You're posting stuff on our social assets. There's a better way to do it. You tell us. How can we create value on our social channels? How can we create value if you're organizing our closet of props that we have for wedding shoots, right? Like efficiencies. Those little things when you empower people to do that and they understand what the core underlying fiber of the business is, that's how you create value. And everything you're saying, I 100% agree. There's great ways to do it. She gave very tactical events, making time for it, very important. But at the end of the day, for me, it starts from within and it comes with, and then it pushes out. So that for me is culture. And maybe I'm just a very passionate, very different when it comes to those things, but that is what is different about Loverly. And for us, when we're recruiting against other people who have more money, they have way more cool things. But what we have is this awesome fiber that comes between us. We all believe the same thing, and it's creating value and solving problems. And also just being awesome.
Alyssa, what about you?
Yeah, I'd agree that culture, at least in more small and growing companies, is less about time and more about choices and who you are. I think about the Silicon Valley company with a conference room labeled the Bromance Chamber. It didn't take any more time to call that the Bromance Chamber than it would to call it the Rainbow Room or the Orange Room or the Conference Room A. MIT has buildings that have numbers, not names. Like, these decisions don't take more or less time. They reflect who you are. And sometimes they create problems, right? Like, having conference rooms labeled the Bromance Chamber has some unintended side effects if you start wanting to, diversify your company. I'm comfortable around programmers.
I hang out in the Bromance Chamber. That sounds cool.
Hey, everyone knows I can bro it out with anyone. But Pax and I actually are very, we think a lot about our company culture, and we had to because of our beginnings. My co-founder, Pax Dickinson, was fired from Business Insider last September. He was called one of New York City's most notorious programmers. That's putting it nicely. So and then I stepped down, and then I came back, and I came back on only if I would be the company's lady boss, and we would specifically have a women in tech agenda. And so now we focus very specifically on hiring women, and on making sure that when people come to our company, they have a really positive experience. And so we're always thinking about what that means. And I realized we have a lot of problems that are already pre-solved because we're mostly a remote company. So our culture is in some ways less pervasive throughout the day-to-day because most of the people who work at Glimpse are working from their jammies in their own homes. And I thought, well, why are we all working from home in our jammies? What is it about Glimpse culture that means we really don't want an office? And it's because we really think independently, we do things our own way, and we built an app that's all about creating intimacy and connection through your iPhone. And so it actually is unsurprising that, these founders who decided, we really want to feel connected to other people through our electronic devices would decide that we don't want to be as connected, physically in the same space. And so it started off with me saying, Pax, I don't need to watch you writing cryptography, writing encryption. He would have these very hard projects, and we would be a small company, just me and my co-founder, Pax. And I'd be like, I don't have to watch you write this hard code for 2 weeks. We can get together for 1 hour. You decide what you're going to do. I decide what I'm going to do. We agree, and then we go do it. Here we are. The product's launched. We've been out 2 months. We have a whole team of people, and we still don't feel the need to come together and be in the same room. And I think that's because we have this culture around, a certain kind of relating with each other. And so again, not like we're taking time to think about our culture. You know, there's those inflection points where you say this will be on our mission statement. There's like the inflection points where you decide who you are and if you're okay with it or not. And if you're not okay with it, maybe it's time consuming to deal with that. But it's been much less about taking the time and much more about making choices and making sure that those are choices that you feel good about and that they reflect your company in a good way.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, a lot of great things have been said. I think culture is about showing and not telling. So you need to first as a leader, and then with your management team, really embody the values that you stand for as an organization. I mean, culture is what gets people to stay till 10 o'clock at night. It's what people, it gets people to work on the weekends. It gets people to put in the extra hours. And so how do you get people to work late? And how do you get people to buy into and have the passion to buy into the problem that you're trying to solve, the pain that you're trying to alleviate, and the mission, the overall company mission? So I think you can talk about those things, and I think it's important to talk about them, so don't get me wrong, but and really lay out, what the mission statement is for the company, what the values are. But I really believe at the end of the day, it's not the things that you say, it's people are watching, everybody's watching, people are picking up social cues within your organization all the time. And so it's really about showing people want to be led, especially when you're starting this thing from scratch and you're building it and people might not know what the overall vision is and how it comes to fruition. You have to be about it. And I think that's really important. And as we get larger, I mean, we're about a 40-person organization with offices in different countries. We've started to document things, and that's helped. But what we found that's really, really valuable is providing examples. A lot of people in startups are it's about passion, or it's about attention to detail, or it's about working really hard. But, at the end of the day, I believe that being successful at a startup is about consistency. So you can work really, really hard, but the next week you could be burned out, or you could not show up to work, or what, it's like how do you get people to behave and operate at a consistent level all the time? Because it's a marathon. It's it's not like you build an app and then all of a sudden 100,000 people are using it. It doesn't go down that way. It's about how do you get people to perform? How do you get people to operate consistently at a very high caliber? And that is culture. That is what you're looking to build. It's how do you get people to operate that way? So
in the spirit of just articulating it, I would actually just love to hear in a couple of sentences what each of your cultures are. Pick whatever company you want. And I'm also just curious kind of when in the company process did it get created? Was it on day one and you hired around it, or was it more organic? I'll start with 37 Angels. We are education first, open and collaborative ethos, and as efficient and transparent as possible with our entrepreneurs around diligence. And I'll be honest, we heard that because we collected testimonials from our entrepreneurs, and we actually collected from entrepreneurs we funded and didn't fund, and they told us that's what our culture was. And it wasn't something, and I mean, it sounds like you guys were much more mindful about that than we ever were. I'm just curious, was it day one? Was it, So first, what is it? And then kind of when did it come about?
Yeah, I mean, we are, well, what is it? I mean, it's really about forward movement. We're about being better tomorrow than we are today. So we have a bias towards action. It's really about doing whatever it takes to get that forward movement. I think people that lend really nicely to startup environments are really just motivated intrinsically by seeing things progress at a rapid pace and just getting that forward movement. we are we are a testimonial-based business because we're a marketplace, so it's about delighting the user, the customer, the client, and doing whatever it takes to satisfy their needs. We are a very team-based environment. Like, we like to say, like, no one shuts off the lights when, like, a person's sitting there. Like, you if you're on a different team, you're helping somebody else get their work done. So we're very, very focused on teamwork. It's not like, okay, you're on the ops team, like, just get it done, not my problem, I'm an engineer. Like, it's just, we don't do that. And, you know, I get in there, I roll up my sleeves if someone needs help. Like, no kind of task is, like, beneath my title or someone else's title, or that's not how you do that in corporate. Like, you want to do that, you go to corporate.
It's not slam corporate now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess, but whatever. So, you know, like, so I think it's like do more with less too. I mean, just because you raise a whole bunch of money is like, when you take money from a VC, it's like taking money from God. Like, you have to pay it back. He expects to be paid back, or she expects to be paid back. And so, you know, just because you raise a bunch of money, you have to still be scrappy, and that's really important to me from an ethos perspective. Like, you know, how can you do more with less? And then I think it's, you know, you say it best, it's passion. It's like, if you don't like what you're doing, don't be here. It's not the right place for you. And so you shouldn't ever take people that don't feel passionate about your mission, because that is what gets people to stay late. That is what gets people to go the extra mile. That is gets what people, you know, gets people to, like, think of, like, the next big feature set or something like that. So it didn't evolve right away. I mean, we're about 4 years old, so it didn't evolve right away. I mean, I think it's doing, and then, like, it becomes very apparent, at least it did for us, like, it becomes we started to codify this about a year ago. It becomes, as we, like, had to hire pretty rapidly and still are hiring pretty rapidly, and I can't touch everyone through the onboarding process, or they don't get to interact with me all the time, we've started to codify it, and I think that's really important.
Alyssa, are you able to communicate yours in, like, 3 sentences, or?
I have 5 words.
Awesome, go.
We focus on value, passion, collaboration, efficiency, and delight. We want everything we do to be delightful.
And was that purposeful on day one, or?
You know, it wasn't. Let me tell you where I learned that those are the things by not having that. And I was like, why am I doing this? Why did I invest my life savings? Why have I told people to quit their awesome jobs that pay them a lot of money to help me on this lunatic dream to transform this $100 billion industry? And in the process of doing it, I'm like, this is really hard and this isn't working. And you identify what wasn't working and then quickly iterated on that and say, all right, this wasn't a cultural fit. What was wrong about it? And then, you know, kind of what wasn't working and then what was working. And that's how we distilled it and refined it. And we're always iterating on it. It's always going to change. And as you feel it when you go from 5 or from 3 to 5 to 7, we felt it again at 12. 15 we're okay, but I imagine we go to 20, it's going to get gnarly again. And we'll throw something else in there.
Well, so I've been at several startups, some that I ran, some that I've been working at. So instead of talking about the culture at my current company, which is a one-person company, and culture is great, by the way.
How do you know?
That's true. How do I know? That's actually a very important question to ask oneself. I'll talk about what a culture, sort of the flip side of a culture, not what it is, but what it isn't. So, because it might help folks start to think about, well, I don't want this, so what is it that I need to do to counteract that and sort of build around that? So a bad culture is one that's toxic, where people point fingers, where people aren't motivated, where it's political, even in as small as 2 or 3 people, where people are vying for maybe a position or vying to be the smart one at the table, and that can happen in a very small group, as small as 2. So thinking about not having it political and not having it having the group around the table think about, well, how do I save face versus actually just solve the problem. And so these are all the things that mean that you've got a bad culture. And so when you think about having a good culture, it's prudent to think about, well, what is it about the dynamic? And I think there's a few inputs into culture. What is it about the dynamic around the table? And by table, it could be 2 people, up to 20 people, up to 50, up to 1,000. What is it about the dynamic that's good and bad? And that's where you can start to evolve the culture. So, for example, at one of the startups I was at, a company called BumpTop in Toronto, that's the one that got acquired by Google. When I first joined, the sort of camaraderie was great, and one might think, okay, great, so your culture's fantastic. But there was more to it. There wasn't really a culture of getting product out the door. There wasn't a culture of making the hard decisions, picking a ship date, and then sticking to it. There wasn't the culture of testing as a group, getting pizza one night and hammering on the product from the perspective of the user. So there wasn't really much of a product ship culture. So in seeing that was missing, that's one of the things that I started to add. And so you'll notice these things through, oh, well, we're not ready to ship. Or, you'll notice like little cues along the way that'll guide you to, okay, that's actually not what that's not what a lot of people should be saying. And therefore, let me see what I can do about addressing this from a cultural level as opposed to just a tactical level, which will only work for that single ship date. If you address it from a cultural perspective, it will ideally help you in all subsequent ship dates. So that's one way to think about it.
Each of you has alluded to this, which is firing. And so I'm just wondering, I guess just out of curiosity, who's fired due to like a culture mismatch? Okay, so tactics and tips around how to do that and not freak out A, the other employees, and B, your investors.
Well,
And
we do
specific
trials.
tactics. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about that.
So because we know, like, Pax and I learned this from hiring people who weren't necessarily the right fit. Unfortunately, we'd already started a trial process. So when you're transparent up front with people that you're doing a trial, it makes it a lot easier when it doesn't work out. It saves space for them, it makes it legally easier for us, and like we all have less invested. And I'm finding trials are really great too, because until you've actually started working with someone, at least in a startup like Glimpse where there's so much to do and so many possible roles, it's not like we're hiring a VP of Biz Dev and we know what that role will look like. There is everything to be done and we're trying to figure out how you fit in. And after someone's come and worked with us for a week or a month, then we can usually better identify, like, this is how many, stock options you should have, this is how much we should be paying you, and this is what your responsibility looks like. And until we get going, we don't always know. But cultural misfits at Glimpse, just Pax and I are very comfortable with risk, which is a classic entrepreneurial trait, but like we are just super comfortable with risk, and we're very bold personalities. Pax is actually much nicer than I am. People are surprised, they're shocked at that. He's sweeter than me. Don't tell him I said that. But like we're real like alpha dog type A personalities, and we really go for it, and we're willing to do things that are scary. Like we're willing to be in a crowded namespace, for example. Glimpse has a lot of competition in the namespace. And Glimpse has a lot of competition in the photo sharing space, in the privacy space. None of that is scary to us. We're happy to take it on. And when we bring in new people, if they're risk averse or if they're not like total badasses, then it just doesn't work out. Like everyone who's actually still with Glimpse now, like everyone who's stayed with the company, they're like really independent, really entrepreneurial, very comfortable taking like really big risks, and like everyone's a total badass. And that may not be the case as we grow. Like that's, when you have a 30-person company, you need different personality types. But for a company that's going to be like 3 to 5 people doing all the things, working remotely, it makes sense for us to have this kind of a style.
Either.
We're 15 and we're 2.5 years old, and if this scares investors, I'm sorry to say this, but the original team that I started with there's only one person left with me. And because the people you have at the beginning are not necessarily the people that are going to get you to the next stage and the next stage. So if your investors are, upset about who you have and that it's changing, wrong people.
It's not about if you fire, it's how you fire them. So that's more
That's true. Okay, so there's going to be churn. Those things are going to happen as you grow and evolve. Now, we've had to let go of people, but what's really funny is every single time we've let go of someone, there has been like a huge sigh of relief. Because everyone else is charging forward, and you can feel it when you're a small team, when there's someone who's not a fit, because they're the naysayer, right? They're the person that says things can't get done. They're the ones that, leave early, show up late. So it's irritating to everyone else. If you have a culture, it's very clear who that other is. The first person that I had to was really scary for me. I was like, I don't want to fire this person. They're older than me. Like, they've worked way more than I have. There are only 4 of us. We used to do weekly meeting updates with the whole team when there was 5 of us. We'd go around, everyone would say what they accomplished that week against their goals and against our monthly goals and our annual goals. And one person made a comment there that, well, there's no way, these goals that we set are unrealistic. There's no way we're ever going to beat insert publicly traded company, biggest competition out there. And the room, it was like, like, how could you say that? We've all given up our lives to do this, right? And it became so clear right in that moment that that person was an other. Because we were all doing this because we thought we were going to take them down, and we knew we were going to. So that's kind of, for us, when you have a really well-defined culture, you can tell who's not a fit. And when you let them go, it actually is a huge kind of sigh of relief. You feel lighter. And you know what happens? It's always scary to let go of people because you think, oh my God, we're not going to get as much done. It's going to be terrible. But there's always someone better around the corner that's going to do more for you, that's more excited about solving that problem. So there is an opportunity. It's not the end of the world. There's always a way to fix it. So I'm not saying people aren't valuable, because people are the most valuable part of your organization. Human capital is number 1 of anything. That's all you have. But at the same time, if that person is not a fit, you immediately have to cut ties. And that's one of the mistakes that I think I made early on, was kind of holding on to people because it was my team. I was going to protect them even when they weren't protecting the rest of the teammates. And that becomes, as I've kind of matured as a CEO, that's the one thing that I've learned is you got to cut the fat early. You got to be okay letting go. And I think everyone else appreciates that, because it's not fair to everyone else who's pulling the weight when someone isn't. And it becomes difficult for the culture.
Go ahead.
I'll add 2 things to that. One, what I found useful, because I hate firing people. It's something I need to get much better at.
It's the worst thing ever.
It's terrible.
I love firing people. everyone knows I love firing people because it's great. It's great for everyone, because usually, anyone who gets fired usually wants to. It's very rare that I let people go who haven't already moved on in some capacity. And I fired a lot of people, actually. I fired my last 2 co-founders. And then everyone said you should fire Paps. I'm like, no, this is a good one. I'm keeping him. But I love firing people because they're always ready to go. And so you're actually just making concrete and official what's been uncomfortable under the surface. Maybe that's different with layoffs and
that's true, but it doesn't feel good sometimes.
Oh no, I'm just this is so good. Now we can
We should all send all of our firing duties to you.
Well, maybe it feels
startup.
good, but I think it's often difficult to craft the message. That can be difficult, or because you can't say some things, and it's awkward.
and sometimes
if
you
you
really
work
like
in an open office, everybody knows.
And
it's
to be fair, sometimes you really like them,
Right.
and there's mixed emotion. Just to be clear, there can be mixed emotion, but I think it's usually really good for the company.
It's not
like you said.
positive.
You have to focus on why you're doing it.
It always is worth it. If you've been thinking it, other people have been thinking it, so it's always worth it. I personally, and everyone's going to be a little bit different, I personally find it really tough. I drag my heels, which is terrible. I encourage people not to do that. I encourage myself to not do that, and yet I find myself doing that sometimes. So what I found helpful are 2 things. One, I'll write down 3 things in terms of what are the key messages I want to say. And it can't be 10, because then the message gets diluted, gets confusing, and you start to backtrack against yourself. So write down 3 things. Look, I've decided that for where the company needs to go, this isn't working out, and that's one point. And there's maybe 2 other points. you know, we need someone who's more focused on this, and you're really good at this, but we need someone really focused on this. And, you know, build up your 3 points, know them, and then deliver them quickly, because you don't want a long drawn out apologetic conversation. Don't be apologetic.
I think Orrick probably has some tips too. Yeah, say or do. There's a script you're supposed to follow.
Yeah. And then the second thing I would add is be gracious. Say, look, you know, this didn't work out here, but I'm happy to help you find something else. That'll make it easier for you. It'll make it easier for the person. It'll make it easier, you know, sort of going forward. You never know when you're going to cross paths with someone in the future and how you're going to cross paths. They might be on the other side of the table. They might have thought a startup doesn't work for them, so then they go work for a corporation, and guess what? Then they might be one of your customers. So be very, very gracious for both, you know, just the humane reason and also for the future value of the business.
This is a very small ecosystem. Okay, so I actually wanted to open it up to the audience for questions.
What's a hiring question that you guys may ask to figure out if someone's a cultural fit? I know Warwick Harper asks, when was the last time you wore a costume? Do you guys have any ones like that?
And I'm gonna ask us to do like lightning round, really rapid fire answers so we get through lots of questions, so.
Tell me about a time you failed and what you did.
I don't have one.
We avoid cultural fit. I think that that's usually used like in discriminatory ways. So we will hire anyone who is good. We don't screen for cultural fit that way.
I mean, I love to ask, what are you scared of? Professionally or personally?
I don't believe in interviews, and I test everybody, right? I give them a project to work on.
So to the woman who is afraid of firing, this is a gift for you.
Oh, thank you. The 5 o'clock club.
Yeah, they actually gave a presentation about how to fire with dignity.
That's fantastic.
But my question actually is, how do you measure culture? How do you quantify culture? Like, what metrics do you use to measure it besides the fact that how the team feels at every meeting?
Gosh, that's a great question. So the question is, how do you measure culture? So culture is, and you heard people sort of describe what their culture is, and you'll find that often it's kind of similar company to company. No one ever says, I want a culture where people are ruthless and cutthroat. And so it's all, I want people to be encouraged, I want them to do their best, I want to create a culture where people can sort of think collaboratively, and those are all really important things. So how do you measure something that is, to some degree, an aspiration? In my experience, I've looked at it from the reverse side, which is how I answered one of the questions, is am I noticing anything that's toxic? And so, you know, you can sort of measure the negative side. That might not be, you know, the most hand-holding view of corporate culture or startup culture, but it's a good way to see if your culture is working. And you had actually brought up a good point earlier. If you think your culture is working, maybe it's worthwhile to test that. So when you have conversations either in a group or one-on-ones, say, how do you like it here? You know, how do you feel here? You know, do you get the sense that you're in a good place? Anything we can do to improve the company as a whole, and culturally?
So my main metric is, are you excited to come to work? When I used to work in finance, which I found someone here that was in my early days when I was making 500 phone calls a day, 5 hours on the phone, I hated Sunday nights. Like, I literally, my stomach hurt because I did not want Monday to start, and I did not want the hell to start. And I'm so excited to come to work every day, and my teammates are excited to come to work every day, and then they stay late, and then they go and they hang out afterwards. The other thing that I think is interesting is my team is protective of the culture. So we're trying to hire people, and I'm saying, you have friends? Like, don't they need a job? Like, what's going on? They're like, dude, I love it so much here. I don't want to bring my friend that, like, I don't think is awesome. Like, I love them as a friend, but I don't want to bring them into the place. I want to protect the team and keep it. So I thought that was really cool. I was like, wow, you're not going to send your friend because you don't think they're as awesome as the rest of the people here. So I think that's really important. Are you excited to come to work every day? Is it fun?
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, do people want to be here? You know, are they excited about the mission? Are they excited about the product? Are they excited about the people? Like, do they want to come to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think another way to look at it, I mean, I love the example of, you know, kind of looking at your friend base and like looking at your network and being able to discern like who would be a good fit. I think that's a good metric. I also think a good metric is like when something bad happens or the shit hits the fan, or I mean like when things are really tough, like who saves the day? Like how many people do you have in the room that are truly gonna save the day for one particular, you know, like, and it's like, can you count? And it's that consistency and the ability to count on people. And you know, when you're in a startup, like you could have a really good day and the next day could be awful.
Worst day ever.
Yeah, worst day ever. And it's very
Then
like,
awesome later again.
yeah, but it's like you see what people are made of in those environments, and I think that's the true test.
The only thing I would add is it's sometimes really hard to get data when you're a 1, 2, 3 person startup. So ask customers, ask other people in the ecosystem like what they're hearing about you, like the buzz in the street. You can often collect a lot of data even if it's a 3-person team. And I saw a hand here. Yes, gentlemen.
You mentioned trials before, which I love the concept of because I've learned also that in interviews you can never learn, you really have to work with the person. So 2 questions. How do you get someone to leave their job for a trial? And the second question, because you mentioned the word legally, and I've been struggling with this because as far as I know, you can't hire someone as an independent contractor if you have control over what they do and you give them the tools like a computer. So how do you actually structure it legally? And I have
Jeremy?
seen
I was
other
like, I'm looking at the lawyers, like, I don't know how to answer that question legally.
Yeah, at least the way we'll do things is we'll hire someone like as a contractor, and we won't necessarily like give them some of those things like computers. And some of that comes from being like a young and scrappy company. Like people have their own computers, we don't need to buy them a second one right now. As to how do you get people to come and join your company, that is always a really hard question. With Glimpse, people write me and they're like, I want to come work for the lady boss. You know, there's something very special about our company right now because this is a moment where people care a lot about privacy. They care a lot about photo sharing and selfies, actually. And they care a lot about women in tech and being part of a company that like really cares about that. So we're able to leverage like our strong mission and the strong personality of the company to bring in really great people. We also look at hiring people who are consultants or people who are underemployed. Like I'll find people who just seem to have been overlooked by the industry. And so they're not necessarily already at Google or at Facebook. And we find truly exceptional people that way.
The first major hires I made, because it was cheaper and lawyers don't get mad at me, I had them all on a 90-day contract. So, here's your roles, here's your responsibilities, know that it's on a trial. If it works, it rolls into a pre-negotiated full-time. Right, so knowing when they come in, they're gonna bust their ass those first 90 days, and you're gonna see pretty early on whether they're a fit or not. The second thing is, after all of that, there's some senior people that you're trying to recruit, and how are you gonna recruit them as a startup? And for me, I just wanted to surround myself with the best piece of people possible, whether I couldn't afford them or there was no way that I could recruit them from a huge company. And I just asked them to be advisors. And when you have the opportunity to work with someone in that capacity, you get to hear their thoughts on strategy. You get to see if they're responsive to you. You get to see if they're engaged with you in a light touch way, even if you're not paying them, right? And 3 of our big hires that we've made have started out with that kind of engagement, where they were an advisor, then they came to contractor, right? Because it was too expensive to hire them. And then at the next stage of the business, we brought them on full time. And I trusted them. I knew that they believed in the mission. They were engaged highly in the business. And sometimes you got to do that because you don't have the money. And if they believe enough in what you're working on, they're going to help you because they're interested in it. And they want to see where it goes and they want to be helpful.
Or Brethren, I just want to make sure we're not saying anything to add from a legal perspective.
No, I think part of the question was about employee consultant distinctions, and if it kind of looks like an employee and it quacks like an employee, they use your computers, they're in your office, you control what they do, they can't say no to projects. Well then, if you call them a consultant, the IRS may treat them as an employee, but that doesn't change the nature of the relationship, and if you've agreed that if things don't work out, that you can let them go or that they can leave, then employee consultant, as long as you've agreed to that, then you're there.
In the back.
How do you decide whether non-work related features like a ping pong table or a foosball table is good for the culture or bad for the culture?
I'll pipe up there. It's a great question because it's not always good. I worked for a company and they put a big ping pong table in the middle of the room. The culture was mediocre and no one ever used it. It became a little bit of a joke, a little bit of a lightning rod, and it was not positive. So it's an excellent question. You just can't put a toy in the middle of the room and sort of walk away and say, okay, great, my culture stays. One way to think about that is to ask your employees how to give them a say into what they'd like to see, and say, hey, we have a $500 budget. Let's here are the top 3 options. Put a little Google form out there, vote, and then one will come up and as the winner, and everyone can get rallied around it. So that's one way to sort of make the team part of it and make sure you're getting something that people want to use. That's what I'd say.
We have a chat in our Slack, which is like our company chat. It's called Make Loverly More Awesomer. And one time we went out there and one of the comments was, just make sure we have toilet paper because it always runs out. And that is like something so small that we're like, shit, we're overlooking that. Like we need to make sure someone's replacing toilet paper. And I think you'd be surprised to hear what's important to people. And it's not necessarily the ping pong table or having crazy snacks or having Diet Coke in the fridge. It's other things like, being able to take half a day off on a Friday, summer Fridays, and that kind of stuff. So you gotta ask them.
So there's actually quite a few questions I'm going to do. Let's have the 3 or 4 hands that were raised just each ask your question because maybe they're all thematically the same. So I want to start here.
Yeah. Quickly, how do you balance out the fit with the personality and the culture of the company with also the need for diversity and especially diversity in opinions?
I saw a couple more hands. No? Okay, yeah.
So obviously you guys are in tech, and when you start a business like this, you need a very talented tech person. And sometimes, engineers or developers, they don't have the, their personality might not be the best fit for your culture. So how do you balance that? How do you pick the talents and the fit?
Okay. So both around balancing kind of culture and fit. Brian?
On the sort of ping pong table point, running a bootstrap startup without much cash, I think about culture a lot, and beyond the sort of things that are internal, the rest of it seems to have a dollar sign in front of it. And so I'm curious if you guys budget, how you budget, how much you budget for events and other sort of activities and expenses for those kinds of culture-focused activities.
And the last question from this side of the room, I thought I saw a hand. Yes.
How do you deal with those who complement each other's skills? How do you define that within your company so you can set the culture in the sense that I guess it's more from a productivity standpoint for who specializes in what and how they fit with one another versus what they really want to do.
Okay, so I think 1, 2, and 4 are really similar, which is around balancing kind of the needs of the group versus the needs of the individuals. So let's start there, and then we'll get to Brian's question around budgeting.
I'm really concerned about cultural fit and its impact on diversity. Cultural fit is often used as a way to screen for people who look and feel a lot like the other people in the company, people you feel comfortable with, people who look and resemble, who you are. And that should be fine in theory, but when we have, for example, a startup culture in Silicon Valley that is largely run by young white males, this can be very problematic for diversity. It's one of the things that we've been very careful and explicit at Glimpse. Pax and I actually talk a lot about diversity of ideology and perspective, and we're far more concerned about that than we are about other... Oh, is that my time? I think that that's extremely important, and we need to be really careful. I believe it's less of an issue in New York, which is inherently has a very diverse ecosystem, but in some sections, certainly of like startup culture and tech culture, cultural fit can make it really hard to bring in different kinds of people?
For me, I look at the intersection of the person's skill set and what they're interested in and try and build roles around that instead of just fit them into, we're looking for a marketing person. It's that curiosity that will kind of push them forward. I think that's really important. And then in regards to having differences of opinions and different viewpoints, I think that's really important. But the common thread is, how do you communicate with each other? How do you collaborate? Do you do it in a positive way? And we invite different opinions all day long. That's all we want, is that challenge, that rub that's going to help us distill and define and make a better product. But the most important core thing there is, how do you talk to each other and how do you work together? And I think that that is critical in a small team, is communication and respect for each other.
I'll quickly add, I think that's one of the biggest jobs of the CEO, to encourage people that do add a tremendous amount of skill that might be different from the culture, to have space in the culture and have the culture grow to them. So there's a great example I have in mind of a designer who was very quiet, fantastic designer. He's the best designer I've ever worked with. I've learned a lot from him, and I continue to learn a lot from him, even though we're not working together anymore. And he's really quiet and says yes all the time. So I had to sort of step up and understand that, okay, when he says yes, that still kind of means maybe, and I need to help him sort of scope out a way to say no. And that, as the CEO, was my job. So I think it's really important for the CEO to make space for different personalities and different ways of interacting.
And then, any comments on the budgeting question? Do you guys explicitly set aside budget?
We do set aside a budget, but it's not a lot. But easy, cheap things to do: go have lunch together outside. Everyone brings their lunch, and you eat together outside. Force people to do things together that are free and easy. And imagine if you're going on a date and you don't have money, what would you do to wow the person? We're living in like the best city in the world. There's a lot of free stuff to do. And even if it's just schedule activities for the team to do together, if you're going bowling or you're going ice skating, you block it off in the middle of the day. Maybe people pay for it themselves, right? There's things that you can do to have team building exercises. Also today we did a really fun exercise where our director of finance and operations brought in Joyride coffee. And we did a coffee tasting in the middle of the day. Instead of people going to Starbucks, it was free for us, I think, and I didn't pay for it. But that was something that was cool. Try coffee together, and it was a company demoing their service. So there's tons of stuff that you can do. You're in New York, you're an entrepreneur, be creative.
It's hilarious you get an example, because I actually went to high school with the founder of Joor.
It's really cool. We drank like 4 different types of coffee.
I'm laughing as I think about my example. My marketing director just drove me to Harvard, MIT, and back, mostly so we could have the time together, and she's been working like 12-hour days. And then we saw a Ben & Jerry's, and she's like, ooh, Ben & Jerry's. So I went in and I got her like a double ice cream cone. So like, I thought my marketing director, ice cream, it wasn't very expensive. It was like $6.50, but it was so whimsical. So there's some, like you said, like high impact things that you can do that, we felt like we were 6. It was nice.
And cultural-based events are not just some sort of fun activity. I mean, that I think that's an important part of winding down and interacting in a different way. But demo days, every Friday afternoon, demo day, totally free. Somewhat more in line with sort of normal work stuff, but really, really big on in terms of impacting culture.
You mean an internal demo day?
Internal, yeah.
We use it too.
Where everyone in the company has to show something. So developers show code. Sometimes they would show a screen, a black screen with white code, and they'd run something, and we'd all have no idea what was going on, but we'd say, great, they're really proud of it. And marketing folks would have to demo a deck that they did to a big, or sales folks would have to demo a big deck they did to a potential client, or I would demo a finance deck. Or something like that. Everyone demos something.
Another really cool idea, our engineering team is teaching our design team how to code. So we see them at lunch together, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. My designers turn into coders. This is like awesome. We'll just hire more designers. But there's things that you can do collaboratively. I think that's also, the demoing is really helpful, because everyone's working all day long with their heads down, and we're in a culture today, like globally, where the millennial generation, like, we want to have some type of gratification, right? So we want to show off what we're working on, and that really helps build the culture to say, this is what I designed, this is what I sold, this is how many receivables I collected, right? That sounds cool when you're like, I just collected $30,000. They're like, awesome. So it's really cool for them to tell what they're working on and showcase that to their peers, and also for everyone to know what the hell everyone's doing all day.
The last question I have is, given that you guys are CEOs and founders, and who you are and how you guys are feeling has a huge impact on the team, what are ways that you guys keep yourselves honest and have open feedback from the team?
Gosh, that's really tough because
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
One of the things I learned the hard way when I became a CEO for the very first time is that what you say is different than what you do and what people end up emulating. So I think someone said earlier, culture is about show, not about talk. And so in terms of what I do to keep myself honest, I remember that because there was a time, maybe a 6-month period, where I was sort of learning and observing this, or I guess ramping up into observing it. And so now I know, so many years forward, that if I say, oh, I'm going to have this done by Friday, and it's not done, guess what? That starts to filter into the culture. If I say, we need to change this, and I don't do it, then guess what? Next time someone says that, it's going to be the same. Or if I don't take responsibility, guess what? Someone's not going to take responsibility later. So that keeps me really honest, because I learned the hard way that my actions get emulated, whether I like it or not.
I was gonna say, we do a lot of company feedback. Like people give their feedback in a box and that kind of thing, and that people actually value that and give very honest feedback. And then I have a management team that is, we meet with every Monday, and they're telling me kind of what's going on, pulse of the organization, and we have a very good, open, honest relationship. And I think that's really important because maybe people are scared of you as the CEO, or they don't want to tell you exactly. So you need to have lieutenants out kind of in the field, making sure that they can, they have the balls to tell you what's going on, because you need to hear that. Otherwise, it might be too late, because CEOs are focused on a million different things.
I'm very close with everyone who's part of the core team, like everyone who works on this every day, and also with the investors. And I just make sure that we're able to check in and have a phone call or see each other in person, which, because we're mostly remote, requires a bit of intention behind it. And a lot comes through in a call or when you're seeing each other in person, especially because for Glimpse it's kind of rare. So when I'll see Rainey Dalton, who's VP Marketing, or I'll see Pax, or I'll talk to a stealth developer who we have who's in Idaho. So that's calling him and being hey, can I just have a call with you and see how you're doing? And he'll be we just had a baby goat, and I have to go buy goat feed. And I wouldn't know this unless I made the space to ask him how his goats are doing and how that's impacting his work. So for our company at this small stage, we're all very close with each other, and I'm really the anchor between most of the people in the company. It's just about being authentic and real and accessible, which is part of who I am and what I bring to being CEO, and taking the time to talk to them without a real agenda, so they can start sharing what's going on beyond just the tasks, and then things come out.
I would say one thing, you have to be extremely introspective whether you're running a company or you're an employee or you want to accomplish anything in your life. What are you good at? What are you not good at? Constantly be thinking about that. And just like you iterate on your product, you iterate on who you are. You want to evolve, you want to be better. And you can only iterate if you have feedback. So that's feedback from your peers, that's feedback from your customers, that's feedback from your family. Sometimes that's not always the best feedback. But you need that feedback, you internalize it, and you refine, and you iterate, and you go out in the world and you become a better person. So I think that being really self-aware of is the key to doing this, because it's effing hard. And you need to know where you need help, and you can't get help if you aren't aware that you need it, and you won't be able to reach out, you won't be able to fix those problems. So that's my take on that.
It's a great note to end this on, so thank you guys very much.